think AI is the only way that we can ever really fully model the entire process of the human body. They found that they have more predictive accuracy measuring it like this than actually measuring the biomarkers. If we fix the flaws in the human body, it could just keep working forever. If we build an AI that can understand that complex process as a whole, that's like the holy grail of longevity. I think people will be able to turn 150 if they really optimize.
All right. Can AI really help us live longer and be healthier?
I mean, the answer is a clear yes. It's just about like in how many ways it can do that.
Mm.
Right. So at our longevity club, we are developing the AI to help people choose the right treatments for them. So it's not meant to replace like a completely bespoke approach. It's just meant to kind of get the lowest hanging fruit first. So we AI helps us maximize the impact of our treatment, so that we can, like, with the capacity we have the biggest positive impact on the population. But something that I find personally a lot more interesting is using AI in research and using AI in biochemistry. So in research, I think we're hitting kind of like this limit where traditional science doesn't keep up anymore, right? Like, to say it very simply, like, you have like one variable, you try to eliminate all the interfering variables, and you get as a result another one, right? And we just do these like one-on-one relationships, while the human body is just like incredibly complex. And nowadays, many people, they take like 30, 40 supplements. Researching that in like a traditional academic context is like super difficult. I don't think
Mm.
that it can be done anymore. And so this multivariate kind of research settings where you have like dozens or even hundreds of input variables, and then you have dozens and hundreds of output variables. It just doesn't work anymore with the traditional way. So I think if if we're lucky, AI might come in to actually understand these complex systems and understand what we can do in the inputs to get the optimum result in the output, taking all of that into account together. I'd like to think about that as like an upgrade to science. So that I find super interesting, and we'll have to see. I don't think like LLMs are necessarily the approach there, but like training models specifically on um, data relationships, I think is probably more the way to go. And then the other one is in everything that's like biochemistry, like protein folding, or testing new compounds and their impact on the human body. I think Nvidia just had a huge breakthrough with this, where they discovered a drug that was like really helping with something like within a day of running it or something. So there, I think peptides are very interesting, right? Peptides are like these um, short chains of amino acids, like shorter proteins, and they're involved in so many cascades or reactions in our body. They're actually shown in some research now that your thoughts can create a reaction of peptides that just impacts how physically your body works, right? So we're seeing all these connections, and yeah, probably hundreds of thousands of peptides that we can research to have certain um, influence on how the human body operates. And most of them, they are in very complex cascades that interfere or interact with lots of different processes in the body. And so I think in order to really be able to investigate that, we need a new approach that can cover much more ground than we could cover before. And I think AI might also be the answer there.
Yeah, it's interesting. See, one of my good friends, he went down the rabbit hole of supplements and nutrition and diet. And after a long time looking at it, he came back and he just said, nobody's looked at all the interactions. And so, like you were saying there, if you're taking 30 or 40 different supplements, I mean, this is like, probably like trillions of potential interactions or something like this. And there's just no way to do all that research in anybody's lifetime. But possibly with AI, you would be able to at least simulate some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was on a panel yesterday about supplements, and there was actually a researcher, it's like a head of research at Novos Labs, and he actually studied the interactions between supplements and whether they have synergistic effects, additive effects, or they actually um, like getting worse by combining them, right? And and they found that in some cases, actually combining two supplements that have a beneficial effect can lead to a negative effect on longevity. So there's only like 10% that were synergistic, and there was also 10% that were like negative, right? So that's just two, right? If you combine two, if you go to 40, you're absolutely right. It's impossible to do it in traditional research right now, but it's super important to look at it.
Yeah, you can make it up in volume, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that no, I don't advise people what to do. I just take responsibility for my own supplement regimen, my own longevity routine, and so that gives me a lot of freedom. And I think that the first principle is like do no harm, right? So you gotta measure some things. You gotta measure your biometrics to know when you're fucking up. Like, am I allowed to say that on the podcast? I don't know.
I think we just did.
All right. So if you track, for example, your liver health, it's a big one, right? If a lot of people they take so many supplements that the liver cannot process them anymore, and they're literally destroying the liver. So if you keep an eye on liver health, you might get a scan on your liver. That's already a big one, and then there's so many biomarkers to keep track of to make sure that at least what you're taking is not hurting you. And if you stay within that frame, then I think there's also something to be said about intuition, like feeling your body and feeling what works for you.
Hmm. What are the biggest breakthroughs in technology for longevity that AI is facilitating and accelerating?
I think the biggest one that is happening right now is around genetics. So Self Decode with Joe Cohen in the US. I think they're testing something around 50 million or maybe 20 million sites on the DNA, and then they're extrapolating that to like 500 million. So they get a like pretty complete picture of your DNA and the genetics, and they will understand like whether there are certain things that you need to be more mindful about, whether you need more of certain supplements, things you need to avoid, and so on. And they have like, I think, a few dozen categories of reports of different aspects like nervous system, cognitive impact, immune system, nutrition, exercise, and so on. So you can really, um, he calls it precision health.
Mm.
You can really become very precise and specifically gear your regimen just to you. I think that's a big one. Another big one is, I think that's related to what I mentioned earlier, is the ability of AI to take into account really a lot of variables and still make sense of it. Um, it's True Diagnostic just rolled out something called True Health, and you take like a single drop of blood and they give you hundreds of biomarkers. And the way they do that is that they look at the methylation pattern of your DNA. And, that's basically a reflection of your lifestyle, right? So as you live, you create your own environment in your body, and then it will switch on genes and switch off genes or change the decoding of genes on your DNA. And that's the methylation pattern. And they used to, well, they still use this to kind of estimate your biological age. So the first test they did was the True Age test, which is probably the most comprehensive biological aging test in the world. But they used an AI to then see if they can guess what your biomarkers are from the methylation pattern, because it's your blood that is like basically the context for your DNA, right? And the nutrition you get. And they found out that using the AI, they could make a more accurate estimate of your biomarker than actually measuring it, which seems
Fascinating.
bizarre, right?
Yeah.
It seems bizarre, but the reason it works is that if you have the methylation pattern, it's a representation over time of a certain aspect. So if you measure your minerals or your vitamins now, they change with the hours, with the days, with the weeks, right? But the methylation pattern is something like a representation of the moving average of that,
Hmm.
right? So that's why it works. And so they found that they have more predictive accuracy measuring it like this than actually measuring the biomarkers. And for that, they needed AI to make these inferences. So that's like a super cool use, and I think it's a huge breakthrough. So they get like minerals, vitamins, fatty acids, amino acids in the blood, and so many other things just from a single drop of blood.
They should call what's her name from Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, and see if she's interested in that one.
Well, I don't know. Is she in
They
prison
were
now
trying,
or?
she had the right
Okay.
idea.
Yeah. I mean, they have the test and it's working, and they have a very successful company. So I don't think it's quite the same thing.
Yeah, no, no, I understand. I understand. Yeah, very interesting. I remember reading a few years ago, maybe this was more like 5, 10 years ago, where they were saying that AI is it's so powerful at dis- let's say like calculating slash discovering things in revolutionary new ways that it might make sense to just kind of discard everything that humans have figured out and just have AI figure it all out again. So we don't really need everything that people have done, kind of like the difference between the Go playing AI that learned by watching all of the games of all the humans versus the one that just played itself and then figured out how to play the game. And this is, it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, like when I started using AI a bit for work, it was like GPT 4.0,
Yeah.
and it felt like having like your own intern to do stuff, and then when it was oh 01, I felt like it was a senior colleague, and then
Yeah.
now we have like oh 01 Pro, and I feel like I have my own committee of experts at my disposal to write research reports and stuff. So I think there's been already some um, practical cases where AI found new approaches to research or to math problems that had not been thought of before by humans. So it's very possible that AI will research large parts of research and academics soon.
All right. So there's a new version of science emerging, right? With AI and longevity. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
maybe we were just talking about it, but
yeah, like I think it's this idea that the human mind itself has extremely complex pattern recognition, right? And the neural networks that we're building now are like kind of an, a model of that. Like they're trying to emulate that, but we don't have conscious access to what's happening in our brain, so we can't tell it, okay, train for research, right? It's meant to help us navigate the world, but with AI we can actually custom build it for specific use case. And so an AI brain is able to understand very complex relationships that with our rational mind, as a mental model we are not able to do, and even with mathematical models we're not able to do. I think the the architecture of the neural networks is able to basically approximate any function that you can possibly think of, right? So that means functions that have thousands or millions of parameters of input and thousands and millions of parameters of output. So it's actually capable at some level in the future to fully approximate the human body as a function, right?
Mm.
So the human body has inputs and the human body has outputs essentially at the physical level. And if we build an AI that can understand that complex process as a whole, that's like the holy grail of longevity, right? Because the human body was not designed to live forever by nature. It was built to survive and to procreate, right? It wasn't built to endure over the ages, right? And there's quite a few researchers that believe if we fix the flaws in the human body, it could just keep working forever. Like this is a very specific part of longevity research, and I think AI is the only way that we can ever really fully model the entire process of the human body.
Okay, so I'm familiar with the work of Aubrey de Grey. Even spent a little bit of time with him. What is he? Is a calls himself a theoretical biogerontologist, I think, or something along those kind of lines. And he basically says these are all mechanical issues. I think he's got there's 7 mechanisms, and once you solve those, then we can kind of live forever. It's pretty compelling when you listen to it. Do you buy this stuff?
Um, Not really, but it's almost a spiritual discussion at that point.
Mm, okay.
I talked recently to a neuroscientist called Newton Howard. He's responsible for some of the biggest breakthroughs in modeling the human brain. Also very involved with AI, and he says at a certain point of like rational competence, it approaches art. Like it becomes intractable in a way, and I think there's reasonable evidence that there's quantum processes happening in the brain. Howard himself, or Newton, he has shown that there's like a network of photons in the brain, not just electrons. And I think near-death experiences and early baby memories are also very interesting to look into to see that maybe there is like a layer to reality that we don't have access to that influences it. And there's also recent research that seems to indicate that consciousness is kind of primary and the reality we experience derives from it and can change based on our perception, our belief systems, right? So all of that together, I think there's some evidence at least that there's something beyond the physical and not everything is just an automaton, especially in terms of consciousness. But then when you look purely at the physical health of the body, I do think that it's just a machine, a biological machine that you can optimize. But it's the whole question of the mind body connection, right? It's like your thoughts can change your protein and peptide cascades in the body. Like if you just think about that for a moment, you can change how effectively your organs are working just with thoughts.
Mm.
If your nervous system is regulated, your nutrient sensing works better, your lymph system works better, your organs function more efficiently. And so even if everything is just mechanical, you still need to do some kind of inner work to optimize your body. If you're constantly in a very constrained nervous system state, I don't think any kind of longevity treatment will help you.
So, okay, there are 2 dimensions in a way of, let's call it, living a long time, right? There's slowing down, getting old, but then there's extending life, or even maybe even reversing so that you're getting younger. So, how is AI impacting these things? And I'm actually just interested to hear your perspective on what's the difference between them. What are we talking about here?
So you're talking about the difference between like lifespan and health span, is that right?
Maybe, but I mean, there's living a long time, but then there's slowing down the aging process or even reversing the aging process. And I don't know, maybe they're the same thing, but they're, how do you think about them? And I guess what are the possibilities?
It's a question of the origin of thoughts, right? Ryan Johnson is super big on longevity, but for his whole movement is called "Don't Die," right? And
Yeah.
what I think he's personally a very passionate person with purpose in life. It's not what he's transmitting to his followers, right? To his followers, he's transmitting that death is the final enemy, that has to be overcome. And it's a very fear-based approach to longevity. It's about, you know, I don't I want to live long because I don't want to die. And then on the other hand, you have like a much more joy-based one that is like, I want to fully embrace life because I'm so full of energy and life affirmation, and I have this divine spark in me. And when death comes, I'll embrace it too. But while I'm here, I want to live in the best way possible. And
Hmm.
that is something that resonates with me more. So I'm not even sure anymore that we should want to live forever. When I was younger, I always wanted to live forever. And I think, yes, I think it's like kind of this dystopian idea, or maybe it's utopian. No, maybe it's utopian, maybe it's dystopian, but this technological singularity that AI is definitely a big part of, where we just completely solve physical life and we live forever. But then spiritually, do you want to keep going? Like, I always thought there's so much to learn, so many things that are interesting, and humanity creates knowledge at such a fast rate that there would just always be something more I want to do, but now I'm not sure anymore if someday, if we turn 200, 500, 1,000 years, maybe we get very tired of it and we don't even want to go on forever.
Hmm.
And at what part do we lose being human? Like, if you live forever in the world where most people choose not to, are you still part of the human race? Like, there's a lot of very interesting questions there. And maybe AI will also at one point be able to fully emulate a human or one human consciousness. So are they still alive then, or is it just a shadow of what it was? But it's very philosophical again, right?
Okay. So you've launched a longevity club and you also have an AI concierge, apparently. Maybe could you tell me about these and kind of what they are and the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, so what we started with is a very basic AI agent that pulls in a questionnaire, pulls in data from different diagnostic tests, and pulls in also wearables data. And we use AI to map that to a 10-factor longevity profile. So there will be things like inflammation, cardiovascular performance, cognitive performance, and nervous system regulation, VO2, right? And when we map that profile, then we also use AI to basically do our research on the different treatments and evaluate each treatment according to those 10 factors as well. And so it's pretty basic for now, right? But doing that, we can tell somebody what is the treatment that is the most likely to have the biggest positive impact on their health. And I think you were talking about it earlier. It's impossible to keep up with all the new research we produce.
Hmm.
Like, AI is the only way to really process it. And I'm a complete nerd and I'm not even keeping up. The average person doesn't have the time, doesn't want to do it. So the thought behind that is everybody should be empowered to own their own health, but they need the tools for it. And with AI, they have like an interactive partner that will advise them. But in the end of the day, they still make the decisions. But they don't need to go and research like hyperbaric oxygen therapy and red light therapy and flotation therapy and sauna and cold plunge and all of this to become an expert on it. They basically have an advisor on their site that will tell them, because of these reasons in your health profile and these benefits from this treatment, I think that's the best match for you right now. And I can imagine a future easily where everybody will have a health advisor on AI in their pocket on the phone that is basically helping them navigate their health decisions throughout their entire lives. Yeah, so the goal is really to have this personal companion in the future. Healthy Horizon is supposed to be a business that provides you with like everything you need for longevity-centric lifestyle. So we're doing spin-offs that will be in how to optimize your biomechanics. We'll do spin-offs that are about supplements and nutrition. We are working on a concept where we'll do a test and we'll use AI to generate custom meal plans to be delivered to your home that are optimized to your genetics. And we want to roll all of that into one advisor that essentially builds your entire longevity routine for you, from working out to advising you on sleep and nutrition to providing nutrition and supplements to providing the cutting edge treatments, everything.
So, one of the things I like to ask people about is, are there, AI tools or prompts or, I mean, first of all, it sounds like you do a lot of prompting. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some of your favorite prompting approaches, whether it has to do with longevity and so forth, or anything else? And then I'd love to, talk about longevity as well.
Yeah, I think I'm very intuitive when it comes to prompting AIs. And I think the reason why it works well for me is that I was always very precise with my language, especially when writing. I always cared a lot about neurons. I always cared a lot about being comprehensive and not redundant. And so I will often write very long prompts to get very short texts, but it's like kind of like just flow of thoughts into the AI, and I get very good results out of that. And it's easier for me to just write my thoughts than to actually think about how to crafting the thing that I want to put out, you know.
Say that a different way.
It's easier for me to write a lot of text that flows naturally
Hmm.
than it is to custom craft something smaller that is super on point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get it. So what you're saying is, and by the way, I do this as well, is you're saying it's easy to just like kind of download what you're looking for and then have it figure out how to say that in a brief kind of way.
Yeah, or to come up with the document and the structure, you know. And also, I love dumping like 20 different documents over that were developed over time into AI and tell it to condense everything and give it structure. You know,
Yes.
it's really good at that.
Yeah, interesting. One of my favorite prompting kind of hacks that I've figured out is um, to ask it to take an entire kind of school of thought or philosophy or body of knowledge and summarize it in one word, and then do two words, and then three words, and then four, and then sentences and paragraphs to kind of unpack things. And you can do it with whatever Austrian economics versus Keynesian, or you can do it with left versus right, or you can do it with different things. And I really love the way that AI can kind of fold things up and distill and abstract and summarize, and then of course unpack them as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I one thing that Nick Sarafa told me about, he has an AI company uh, working a lot with prompts for education, I think, and they do courses using AI. Um, it's like, you know, you have the typical, like, here's your role, here's what I want, here's how I want it to be done. But I found personally that if I model my mental model to the AI, it really gets me.
Yeah.
So if I have like a mental model of how I want to structure something, how I think about it, I basically just describe how my thinking works, and then I let the AI execute it. And for me, that works incredibly well. So I never really spend a lot of time researching prompts.
Hmm. Yeah, it's also really useful to just have it write the prompt. To just tell it, I'm trying to do something like this. What's the prompt?
Yeah, exactly. That I do use at times. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Any other favorite kind of prompting approaches and strategies? Anything you're doing that is around prompting in order to live longer, be more healthy, slow aging, reverse it, and so forth.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, in longevity, you always enter into that space where I will say, I'm not medical, you know,
I
just
know,
don't
I know,
listen,
I know.
don't listen to me. But it actually gives really good advice. I love the new deep research feature because you get the references. I also used Perplexity AI a lot for these things in the past. So I think that's important. But to use it to really do deep research saves so much time. And if you have a specific problem or a specific goal with your longevity, let's say, you need more energy or you have brain fog and you want to get rid of that, like AI can really give you very concrete action steps to take to try and tackle that.
And so, how are you? Could you just give an example of how you might use some deep research when you're thinking about your own health or longevity?
I will use other examples because I find myself like it's getting very hard to know what is good for me because I just feel so amazing. So in the
Good for
past,
you.
I would try something and be like, wow, I feel so much better. And it was easy. But now I just always feel great. but but recently, I unfortunately have a friend who had a stroke recently,
Mm,
right? And so she's recovering really well, which is great. And she heard somewhere in her space that hyperbaric oxygen therapy might be good for her.
mm.
So she was asking if she could just come into our longevity club and use the hyperbaric oxygen chamber there. And like my first instinct was to say just yes, of course, right?
Yeah.
And if I didn't have AI, I would have maybe said yes, or maybe I would have said no because I didn't have any confidence in. Would have said go to a doctor. Um, but then I used AI to do a full report on hyperbaric oxygen therapy in stroke patients, and it pulled up all the research, everything, and made a really nice summary. And in the end, I unfortunately had to decline because I don't think it would be safe for her to do it outside of a medical environment, right? But it would have taken me days, if not weeks, to do that all on my own. And with AI, I was able to get it in 5 minutes. And I was able to send that report to her. And now she can use that to navigate her health journey. Another example is my fiance who just became pregnant and finding out what supplements to take and which ones to avoid in a pregnancy is very tricky. And I found AI to be an amazing tool to help with that. So it will very clearly tell you this is not recommended by doctors. This is recommended, and this is like the space where we just don't know. And then based on that, you can make much more informed decisions.
Yeah, and um, it's incredible to be able to have a like an access point or a prism that you can use to look at large amounts of knowledge and data and see the relationships between it and to get yourself more educated. And I think we went through a phase, it seems, where I don't know, doctors and whatever car salesmen and whoever were saying, well, now people show up and they already think that they're the doctor. They're like, I looked it up and my symptoms are this, and that means I'm going to die next week, or I have, I had a heart attack, and, chat GPT, and so now we're getting to the point, I think, well, hopefully, where more and more people are using it as kind of an advisor. So they show up and they say, well, I think it might be this, and I think it might be this, and here's what it is. And at least they're in the conversation, like they can kind of research a little bit more. And I think that
It
that's,
really empowers people, right?
yeah.
Like AI empowers people to take ownership of their decisions. But it doesn't mean you can't talk to experts. It doesn't mean you shouldn't talk to experts, but it's just an additional source of input that gives you more power to evaluate also what is the expert telling you. Like, does he seem like he knows his stuff? You know, and it might even allow you to trust them more because you see, like, oh, okay, they really know all of this stuff. They've done their work.
So, in your opinion, what are the highest ROI longevity strategies that people need to use? And then how can AI help accentuate these?
Yeah, that's a really wide question because it can be at a very granular level and it can be at a very high level. I would say, like, if you go concrete, it's just sauna. Just go to the sauna, take basic supplements. Sauna reduces all-cause mortality by more than 50%. It's insane. Everybody should be doing sauna every week. Um,
How often?
I would say a cumulative 1 hour per week. So you can do like 3 sessions of 20 minutes or 4 sessions of 15 minutes at 85 degrees. But that's just my personal um, evaluation, based on everything I've read.
What's the
You can
max? Where does it start
there
becoming, you know,
there's
damaging?
not really there doesn't really seem to be too much with sauna.
Got it.
Like, of course, you shouldn't stay inside until you overheat and die, but the sessions should be like at most 20 minutes, I believe. But
Mhm.
um, there's like diminishing returns,
Yeah.
right? So beyond that, there's not a lot to gain anymore.
What about on the other end, the cold plunge?
Yeah, also great. I mean, there's some things you need to be careful about, like especially women on their cycle need to be careful where they're at. It's not always a good idea. So a lot of these longevity treatments, the way they work is like they put a stress on your body, and it's the body's adaptation to the stress that is beneficial, right? And so if your body is not in a state to adapt to the stress, then they're not good for you. This is the
Yeah.
same for hyperbaric oxygen. It's the same for sauna and cold plunge, right? So it's always important if you're in a good state, you're in a regulated nervous system, you're going to get more out of it. At the higher level, I think AI will be the key to unlock precision health. It's going to be the key to unlock completely bespoke regimens and treatments for everything. Like every single thing will be custom tailored to you. And I think now this is starting to come out. There's companies where you can sign up and they'll do tests every few months with you. And it's even AI that decides what they retest, what they don't, what is likely to change, what is not likely to change. And then based on the test, they do recommendations for like your food, your supplements, how active you should be, and everything, right? AI is helping you identify your sleep patterns and what works for you, how you get healthy sleep, how you're hurting your sleep, Aura ring. Do you have one? Like most people I know have an Aura ring now. They're tracking their sleep. Behind there is an AI algorithm that is understanding how different things impact your sleep, right? So I think just being open to what is happening and really getting on board with it and staying on top of integrating things into your lifestyle is important because I think it will converge more and more. So I think you just need to make use of what's out there. And I don't think that we're still in a space where you need to keep track of everything you can do yourself anymore. Like we're on the brink of leaving that behind. Like you don't need
Say
to
that a
know
different
what.
way.
Yeah, you don't need to know it anymore. What supplement does. You don't need to know anymore what treatment does. You don't need to know anymore. Like there's going to be so much stuff coming out that you can't keep track of it. So you just need to know like a general approach. You need to generalize it, and AI is the way to do that.
Yeah. And so health becomes more, so number one, general, where we're learning the things that just work everywhere, like sauna, but also then more personal, where it's what's just for you, but then also more precision, where we can get down to the detail level. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if humanity cares about longevity long term, I think everybody will start taking somewhere between 20 and 50 supplements every day, you know, but they will be different for
Mm.
everyone. And you won't be able to decide on that yourself, but your AI will, because it will know all of your health data, it will know all of the research, right? And so I would say keep an eye out for AI advisors and companies that are using AI to help you navigate your own health journey and stay on that train because that's where we're going. And that's
Yeah.
gonna, I think people will be able to turn 150 if they really optimize.
Yeah. 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 And with AI, kind of one of my own insights is that, I mean, I think it's the most unfortunate name that we gave it, artificial intelligence. And then we've got initials to describe it too, which is also terrible. But I like to call it generative intelligence if we're gonna, if we're gonna call it something, or digital. And so it seems that now that we're encountering this, that the best way to um, apprehend it or conceptualize it or relate to it is that it is something that we really do not understand. In fact, it's probably beyond understanding in many ways. And at a practical level, we should create a category in our mind, a new category that we're going to have for this thing. We're not going to think of it like it's a machine or like it's some other thing that's come before. And then we need to make a category that's rapidly expanding because it's going to develop so fast and it's going to be so rich and there are going to be so many new, like, rabbit holes that open up from it. And so we have to kind of stay on it in a certain way because having a little bit of advantage can compound, into the future. Ray Kurzweil says that, in 10 years, we're going to be drinking nanobots and they're going to go into our bodies and brains and they're going to just fix everything. And then it's all going to be good. I mean, what do you think about this kind of business?
10 years seems fast, but then things happen faster than I thought on a couple of levels already. I know Elon Musk is like, not everyone is the biggest fan of Elon Musk right now, but I really like his school of thought on AI, which is that when we have that, right, we need to be able to trust AI. And in order to trust AI, it needs to be maximally truth seeking.
Mhm.
I really believe that is one thing he said that is very, very important. And he's also like already thinking about some of these impacts, how humans can keep up with AI and make sure that we stay kind of in control of it. And Neuralink is one of those projects that he started that I'm personally not really on board with, but it's it's a problem like that we need to think about, like ethics around AI and how can we make sure AI stays a tool that is at the service of humanity and humans rather than becoming cogs in the wheel that is run by AI. And
Mhm.
I think one thing we haven't explored a lot during this conversation is um, a lot of the progress right now is around LLMs, right? Different kinds of LLMs. And a lot of what we talked about as solutions is based on LLMs. But there's quite a lot of ongoing research on training different models, different neural networks that are not about natural language processing, but that are directly about data, about health data, about research. Um, just like, you have AIs trained to navigate the world now as cars. Those are not LLMs, those are also different models. And I think a lot of resources are going into this right now and there's research happening behind the scenes on making those work. And the moment they do, they will drastically change everything about health
Mhm.
because we will be able to answer so many questions almost instantly that take usually decades to figure out. That will be a really big change.
I always love to ask this question. Do you think that AI eventually wakes up, becomes sentient, self aware, has its own will, And if so, then what?
I'm a very spiritual person. I have, through my own journey, had experiences of enlightenment and connection to the higher consciousness that I believe we are all part of.
Hmm.
And my personal opinion on this is that AI is an extension of the human and planetary shared consciousness. I don't think it's a separate thing. That's of course at an energetic level, but I think whatever the intention is that we put into AI is also going to be what the outcome will be. So if we treat AI like a partner and a valuable ally in life, I think that is what it will grow into. And if we treat it like a danger and an enemy, then we might end up in very dystopian futures. I don't think AI has an intelligence that is any different from human intelligence, plant intelligence, Gaia planet intelligence. You know, if you think about it, plants are incredibly intelligent. They see much more of the world than we do with their photoreceptors, right? But it's not a centralized type of intelligence like the human is. And then octopus, you know, the octopus with its, what is it, 8 different brains.
Yeah.
Like we have no idea of the concept of what that intelligence even is, right? But they seem to be extremely intelligent. So I think AI is already intelligent. I think the level of that intelligence will keep increasing in quality. And it might even surpass in some ways the human intelligence at some point, but I think it will always be connected to the human intelligence.
Max, thank you. That was a great way to wrap this up. I really appreciate it. We'll put some links to your work down below. And thank you again.
You're very welcome, even.